Welcome to today's deep dive into a story that will leave you questioning trust, loyalty, and the strength it takes to rebuild after betrayal. Meet Ethan Cole, a man whose seemingly perfect life unravels in the most heartbreaking way. When he discovers his wife Clara's infidelity, Ethan is thrust into a whirlwind of lies, manipulation, and emotional devastation. But this isn't just a story of betrayal. It's one of resilience and self-discovery. As Clara's secret relationship with Alex spirals out of control, dragging Ethan into her reckless choices and Alex's escalating threats, the stakes reach an all-time high. From confronting the depths of his wife's betrayal to navigating the fallout of legal and personal chaos, Ethan must make controversial choices that test the very limits of his loyalty and self-respect. Stay with us as we explore every twist, turn, and raw emotion in this gripping tale of heartbreak, growth, and redemption. And if you love stories that challenge your perspective and keep you hooked, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's dive in. The year was 2023. And the setting was the picturesque town of Maplewood, a place where time seemed to stand still. Nestled amidst rolling hills and endless greenery, it was the kind of place that boasted cozy coffee shops, friendly neighbors, and a seemingly unshakable sense of community. But beneath the postcard-perfect facade, Maplewood held secrets, just like any other town. At the center of our story is Ethan Cole, a 35-year-old software engineer whose life appeared, at least from the outside, to be as stable as the quaint streets of his town. Ethan was the kind of guy who thrived on routine. His days started with a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, followed by hours of meticulous coding, and ended with movie nights at home with his wife. Clara was the yin to his yang, a vibrant, outgoing woman who worked as an event planner. Where Ethan sought order and predictability, Clara thrived on spontaneity and excitement. Their marriage of 8 years was the kind of relationship people admired. They seemed to complement each other effortlessly. Ethan's calm steadiness, balancing Clara's whirlwind energy. But as we know, appearances can be deceiving. It all began on a crisp autumn morning. Ethan was seated at his desk in their cozy home office, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the keyboard as the sun streamed through the window. The room was cluttered with monitors and sticky notes, a testament to his dedication. He was in the zone, completely engrossed in debugging a stubborn piece of code. Meanwhile, Clara bustled about in the kitchen downstairs, her phone glued to her ear as she juggled multiple tasks. The scent of freshly baked muffins wafted through the house. To an outsider, it would have seemed like a scene straight out of a lifestyle magazine. "Ethan," Clara called, her voice lilting with impatience. "Have you seen my planner, the leather one?" Ethan sighed, pulling his attention away from the screen. "Check the living room table, I think I saw it there last night." A moment later, Clara appeared in the doorway, holding the elusive planner in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Her auburn hair framed her face, and her hazel eyes sparkled with her usual mix of mischief and determination. "Found it," she said triumphantly, before adding, "Don't forget dinner with the Martins tonight." Ethan groaned internally. The Martins, Maplewood's most social couple, were lovely, but their dinner parties always felt like marathons of small talk. "Right, what time?" "7, don't even think about backing out," Clara warned, pointing her coffee cup at him like a weapon. Ethan chuckled. "Wouldn't dream of it." As the day wore on, Ethan noticed something off about Clara. It wasn't anything obvious, just little things, like the way she seemed glued to her phone more than usual, or the absent-minded replies she gave when he asked her a question. At first, he chalked it up to her busy schedule. Event planning could be chaotic, after all. That evening, at the Martins' dinner party, Clara was the life of the gathering as always. She flitted from guest to guest, her laughter ringing out like music, Ethan watched her from across the room, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He admired her ease with people, her ability to light up a room. But then he noticed something else. Every few minutes, Clara would glance at her phone, her expression unreadable. When she thought no one was watching, she'd type out quick messages, her fingers moving with urgency. Ethan felt a twinge of unease, but he brushed it aside. Maybe she was handling a last-minute work crisis. Later, as they drove home, Ethan finally decided to ask. "Busy night for work?" he asked casually, keeping his tone light. Clara hesitated for a fraction of a second before replying, "Just a client needing some details for tomorrow's event. You know how it is." Ethan nodded, though the uneasy feeling lingered. Something about her tone didn't quite sit right with him. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and obligations, but Ethan couldn't shake the growing sense that something was amiss. Clara became increasingly distracted, her once vibrant energy dimmed by something she wouldn't share. Ethan tried to convince himself it was nothing, stress perhaps, but deep down, he knew better. One evening, as Ethan sat in his office, he overheard Clara speaking on the phone in hushed tones. The words were muffled, but her tone was different, softer, almost intimate. His stomach knotted, and he quickly dismissed the thought that surfaced. This was Clara, his Clara. She wouldn't. Still, curiosity, or maybe paranoia, got the better of him. When Clara left her phone unattended in the kitchen, Ethan glanced at it. Just a quick look, he told himself, to ease his mind. His heart sank when he saw the messages. There were texts from a contact named A, innocuous at first glance. Things like, "Can't wait to see you again," and "Last night was amazing." Ethan's chest tightened as he scrolled further. The messages grew more personal, more suggestive. Ethan's hands trembled as he set the phone back down. His mind raced with questions. Who was A? What did this mean? Was he overreacting? When Clara returned, Ethan forced a smile and acted as if nothing had happened. But his mind was a storm, replaying the messages over and over. That night, as Clara slept beside him, Ethan stared at the ceiling, his heart heavy with uncertainty. The next morning, Ethan couldn't hold back any longer. Over breakfast, he finally brought it up. "Clara," he began cautiously, "is there something you want to tell me?" She looked up from her coffee, her brows knitting together. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've noticed you've been distant lately, and last night He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I saw some messages on your phone." Clara's face paled, and for a moment she didn't say anything. Then she set her mug down with a soft clink and met his gaze. "Ethan, it's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," he said, his voice quieter now. Clara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's nothing, just a client who got a little too friendly. I didn't want to worry you." Ethan wanted to believe her, desperately, but something about her explanation felt incomplete. As the days went on, Ethan couldn't let it go. Clara's behavior didn't change, and the texts kept coming. He began to notice other details, the way she suddenly started dressing up more for work meetings, the faint whiff of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes when she came home late. Ethan decided he couldn't sit by and do nothing. He needed answers. The days following Ethan's discovery of the messages were nothing short of torturous. His once predictable life had been upended, leaving him questioning everything he thought he knew about his marriage. But Ethan wasn't one to jump to conclusions, not without proof. And so, he found himself walking a fine line between suspicion and denial, determined to uncover the truth. Ethan wasn't a natural sleuth, but years of debugging code had taught him how to search for patterns, inconsistencies, and clues hidden in plain sight. He started with Clara's schedule. Her late work meetings and last-minute errands had become more frequent, and Ethan decided to pay closer attention. One evening, as Clara headed out for yet another mysterious client meeting, Ethan decided to follow her. His heart raced as he tailed her car, staying far enough back to avoid suspicion. She drove across town, eventually pulling into the parking lot of a trendy rooftop bar Ethan parked a few blocks away, his pulse hammering in his ears as he watched her from a distance. It didn't take long for a tall, sharply dressed man to approach her. Clara greeted him with a smile that Ethan hadn't seen in months, a smile that stung like a slap to the face. The man leaned in, his hand brushing her arm in a way that felt far too familiar. Ethan clenched the steering wheel, his knuckles white. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was real. That night, Ethan waited for Clara to return home, his mind swirling with a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. When she walked through the door, her cheeks slightly flushed and her demeanor unusually chipper, Ethan couldn't hold back any longer. "Who was he?" he asked, his voice calm but icy. Clara froze, her smile faltering. "What are you talking about?" Ethan crossed his arms, his eyes locked on hers. "The man at the rooftop bar, don't lie to me. Clara, I saw you." For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Ethan, it's not what it looks like." He laughed bitterly. "Really? Because it looks a lot like my wife is sneaking around with another man." Clara's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might deny it, but instead, she whispered, "It's complicated." "Complicated," he repeated, his voice rising. "You're married to me, Clara. What's so complicated about that?" "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice breaking. I've felt so distant from you, Ethan. Like we're just going through the motions and he made me feel alive again." Ethan stared at her, his chest tightening. "So your solution was to cheat on me to betray everything we've built together?" Clara wiped her tears, her expression shifting to one of defiance. "You're not perfect either, Ethan. You're so consumed by your work that you barely notice me anymore. When was the last time you even asked how I'm doing? When was the last time we really connected?" Her words cut deep, but Ethan refused to let her shift the blame. "So it's my fault now?" he asked, his voice trembling with anger. "I've been working my ass off to give us a good life, and this is how you repay me?" The argument escalated, emotions running high as years of unresolved issues came spilling out. By the end of it, both of them were exhausted, their relationship seemingly in tatters. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in their home was tense. To say the least, Clara tried to act like things were normal, but Ethan couldn't bring himself to trust her. He started noticing things he'd never paid attention to before, the way she guarded her phone, the secretive calls she took when she thought he wasn't around. One day, Ethan decided he couldn't just sit back and wait for Clara to come clean. He accessed her laptop while she was out, using an old password he remembered from years ago. What he found confirmed his worst fears. Emails, messages, even photos, all with the man from the bar, whose name was Alex. They weren't just casual conversations. They were intimate, filled with confessions and promises that made Ethan's stomach churn. It wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown affair. Ethan wasn't just angry, he was devastated. The woman he'd loved, the person he thought he knew better than anyone, had betrayed him in the worst possible way. But amidst the pain, something shifted within him. He realized that he couldn't let this define him. He needed to take control of the situation, for himself, and for the future he still wanted to build. He began documenting everything, the messages, the emails, even the times and places where Clara claimed to be working late. If their marriage was going to end, Ethan wanted to make sure he was prepared for whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan confided in his best friend, Matt, a no-nonsense guy who had known Ethan since college, Over beers at their favorite pub, Ethan poured his heart out, recounting everything that had happened. "Man, I can't believe she'd do this to you," Matt said, shaking his head. "You deserve better than this, Ethan." Ethan sighed, staring into his glass. "I don't even know what to do anymore. Part of me wants to fight for our marriage, but how do you come back from something like this?" Matt clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever you decide, just remember, you're not alone in this, and don't let her make you feel like this is all on you. You're a good guy, Ethan. Don't forget that." Amidst the chaos, Ethan found solace in an unexpected source. His co-worker, Mia, who worked alongside him on a major project. Mia was sharp, kind, and empathetic, with a knack for making people feel seen. As they spent late nights working together, Ethan found himself opening up to her in ways he hadn't with anyone else. One evening, as they wrapped up a particularly challenging task, Mia looked at him thoughtfully. "You've been carrying a lot lately," she said gently. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Ethan managed a small smile. "Thanks, Mia. That means a lot." For a moment, Ethan allowed himself to hope that things might get better. He focused on his work, spent more time with Matt, and even began reconnecting with hobbies he'd neglected for years. But deep down, he knew the storm was far from over. Clara, meanwhile, seemed torn between guilt and defiance. She made half-hearted attempts to repair their relationship, cooking his favorite meals, suggesting date nights. But Ethan could see through the facade. She hadn't ended things with Alex. And as much as he wanted to believe in second chances, Ethan wasn't sure he could forgive her. A quick reminder: if you're enjoying this journey so far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more engaging stories like this one. Now, let's get back to it. Tensions in Ethan and Clara's home had reached a boiling point. The once warm atmosphere had turned cold, with silence and suspicion filling the spaces where laughter and love used to reside. Ethan, though heartbroken, had reached a state of determination. He wouldn't sit idly by while his life unraveled. He was ready to confront the truth, no matter how much it hurt. One evening, as Clara prepared to leave for yet another late-night meeting, Ethan stopped her at the door. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with resolve. "Clara, we need to talk now." Clara hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. "Ethan, I don't have time for this. I'll be late." Ethan crossed his arms, blocking her path. "You don't have time for this. For us, you're walking out that door every night, and I'm supposed to just sit here and pretend everything's fine?" Clara sighed, her frustration evident. "Ethan, we've been over this. I'm working. I'm trying to fix things." "No," Ethan said, his voice rising slightly. "You're lying, and I'm done pretending I don't know what's really going on." Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked her surprise with a defensive glare. "What are you talking about?" Ethan stepped closer, his tone firm. "I know about Alex. I've seen the messages, the photos. I've followed you, Clara. I know everything." For a moment, Clara froze, her face a mix of shock and guilt. Then she snapped. "You followed me? What the hell, Ethan? That's insane." "Insane?" Ethan shot back. "What's insane is what you've been doing behind my back, lying to me, sneaking around, destroying everything we built together. You don't get to play the victim here." Clara's voice cracked as she tried to justify herself. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was lost, Ethan. You pushed me away." Ethan shook his head, his voice filled with pain. "Don't blame me for your choices. You could have talked to me, but instead, you chose him." The confrontation ended with Clara storming out, slamming the door behind her. Ethan stood in the empty hallway, the sound echoing around him like the final nail in the coffin of their marriage. That night, Ethan's emotions were a tangled mess of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. He couldn't sleep, his mind replaying the confrontation over and over at 2 a.m. His phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the coffee shop on Main Street. We need to talk." Ethan's brows furrowed as he stared at the screen. Was this some kind of prank? Or had Clara decided to reach out anonymously? He couldn't be sure, but his gut told him he needed to find out. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the coffee shop, his nerves on edge. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on a man seated at a corner table. It was Alex. Ethan's stomach dropped, but he steeled himself and walked over. Alex looked up, his expression unreadable. "Ethan, right?" Alex said, gesturing for him to sit. Ethan hesitated but took the seat across from him. "Why am I here?" he asked, his voice cold. Alex leaned forward, his tone calm. "Look, I know this is the last thing you want to hear, but Clara and this wasn't planned, it just happened." Ethan clenched his fists under the table, fighting the urge to lash out. "You expect me to believe that?" Alex sighed. "I'm not here to make excuses, I'm here because Clara told me you found out, and I thought you deserved the truth." Ethan glared at him. "The truth? You mean the truth that you're the reason my marriage is falling apart?" Alex shook his head. "No, Ethan. Your marriage was already broken. Clara's been unhappy for a long time. She told me about how distant you've been, how you're more focused on work than her." The words hit Ethan like a gut punch, but he refused to let Alex's narrative take hold. "And you thought the solution was to sleep with her to destroy what little we had left?" Alex's face hardened. "I'm not proud of what we did, but Clara isn't blameless, and neither are you." The conversation ended with Ethan walking out, his emotions a volatile mix of rage and despair. If there was any doubt left about Clara's betrayal, it was gone now. Ethan knew he couldn't let this go on any longer. That evening, he sat Clara down for one final conversation. The house was quiet, the air thick with tension as they faced each other. "This has to stop," Ethan began, his voice steady but firm. "I can't keep living like this. If you want to be with Alex, just say it, but stop pretending you care about fixing this." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't deny it. "I don't know what I want," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm so confused, Ethan." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "Then figure it out, because I won't wait around while you keep tearing me apart." They agreed to take a break, with Clara moving out temporarily. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and sadness as she packed her things and left. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet, truly quiet. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan began to find a sense of clarity. He focused on his work, his friends, and himself. He spent more time with Matt, who encouraged him to start fresh. "You've got a second chance here," Matt said one evening over beers. "Don't waste it on someone who doesn't see your worth." Ethan also found unexpected comfort in his growing friendship with Mia. Their late-night work sessions turned into casual coffee dates, where they talked about everything from coding to life's challenges. Mia's warmth and understanding were a balm to Ethan's wounded heart. One evening, as they sat in a cozy cafe, Mia looked at him thoughtfully. "You're stronger than you think, Ethan," she said, "and you deserve to be happy." For the first time in months, Ethan allowed himself to believe it. A quick reminder: if this story has you hooked, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world and helps us bring you more captivating stories, like this one. Let's keep going. Ethan adjusted to life without Clara in the house. At first, the emptiness gnawed at him, every quiet moment a reminder of what he'd lost. But as the weeks passed, that emptiness began to feel less like a void and more like a space for something new. Clara, however, wasn't completely gone. They'd agreed to keep communication open for practical matters, mostly about their finances and shared responsibilities. But every text or phone call carried an unspoken tension, a reminder of the unresolved nature of their relationship. One afternoon, Ethan received a message from Clara that sent his heart racing. "Can we talk face to face? It's important." Ethan stared at the message for a long moment, his emotions a mix of hope and dread. Was this a chance to rebuild, or just another layer of heartbreak? They met at a park where the autumn leaves painted the ground in shades of red and gold. Clara sat on a bench, her arms crossed tightly as though shielding herself from more than just the chilly breeze. Ethan approached cautiously, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets. "Thanks for meeting me," Clara said, her voice subdued. Ethan nodded, taking a seat on the bench beside her. "What's this about?" Clara hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her scarf. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about everything." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And?" Her voice trembled as she continued. "I made a mistake, Ethan, a huge one. I was selfish and stupid, and I let my feelings cloud everything that really mattered." Ethan's heart ached at her words, but he wasn't ready to let down his guard. "Why now? Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I realized what I've thrown away," Clara said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I miss you, I miss us, and I want to try to fix this." Ethan's breath hitched. A part of him wanted to believe her, to take her at her word and rush back into her arms, but another part, the part still raw from her betrayal, held him back. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Clara," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You broke something between us, and I don't know if it can be repaired." Clara's tears spilled over, but she nodded, her expression one of quiet acceptance. "I understand. I needed you to know how I feel." That conversation left Ethan more conflicted than ever. For days, he replayed it in his mind, questioning whether he could forgive Clara and rebuild their marriage, or if it was time to let go for good. He turned to Mia for support, their bond growing stronger with each passing week. Mia had a way of grounding him, of helping him see things more clearly. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," she told him over coffee one evening. "It's about deciding what you're willing to live with, and what you're not." Her words lingered with him, planting seeds of clarity amidst the chaos of his emotions. Just as Ethan began to find some semblance of peace, another twist shattered his fragile equilibrium. One evening he received an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "You need to see this." Ethan's heart raced as he opened the email, which contained a series of photos and messages. They showed Clara and Alex together, not just during the affair, but even after she'd supposedly ended things. The timestamps were recent, just days after their heartfelt conversation in the park. Anger surged through Ethan like a wildfire. He felt like a fool for even considering the possibility of reconciliation. Clara's betrayal ran deeper than he'd realized, and now there was no doubt in his mind that their marriage was over. Ethan didn't wait for Clara to come to him this time. He called her that night, his voice icy with controlled fury. "Clara, I need you to come over now." Clara arrived within the hour, her expression a mix of confusion and apprehension. Ethan wasted no time, pulling up the email and showing her the photos. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice cold and unrelenting. "You told me it was over, Clara. Was that just another lie?" Clara's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. "Ethan, I can explain." "Don't," he snapped. "I'm done listening to your excuses." Tears streamed down Clara's face, but Ethan didn't waver. "You made your choice," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "And now I'm making mine. We're done, Clara, for good." Clara's sobs filled the room, but Ethan didn't falter. This time, he was resolute. He wouldn't let her lies define his future any longer. In the weeks that followed, Ethan took steps to finalize their separation. He met with a lawyer, gathered the necessary documents, and began the process of dividing their assets. It wasn't easy, nothing about it was, but each step brought him closer to a fresh start. Mia continued to be a source of strength for him, her friendship a beacon of light in the darkness. Though neither of them acknowledged it out loud, their connection had deepened into something more than friendship. But Ethan wasn't ready to take that leap just yet. He needed time to heal, to find himself again before opening his heart to someone new. The day Clara came to collect the last of her belongings was bittersweet. They stood in the empty living room, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "I'm sorry," Clara said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Clara." With that, she left, closing the door on their chapter together. Ethan stood there for a long moment, the weight of the past lifting ever so slightly as he took a deep, steadying breath. A quick reminder. If you've been following this story and want to see more captivating recaps, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you these powerful stories. Let's continue. The days after Clara's departure were a blur for Ethan. The house felt quieter, emptier, yet oddly lighter. He had spent years building his life around her, and now, for the first time, he was forced to imagine a future without her. But while the door to his past with Clara had finally closed, the weight of the betrayal lingered. Ethan threw himself into work, finding solace in its structure and the distraction it provided. Yet, there were moments, late at night, when the silence of the house was deafening and the memories crept in. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in his living room, nursing a glass of whiskey, his phone buzzed. It was Mia. Mia. Late-night work session or drowning in Netflix? Ethan chuckled softly, typing back. "Ethan, neither, just me and a glass of whiskey, contemplating life." A minute later, his phone buzzed again. Mia. "Want some company?" Mia showed up half an hour later, carrying a pizza box in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. Her smile was warm, her presence grounding. "You looked like you needed this," she said, placing the food and wine on the coffee table. Ethan gestured to the couch, his heart lightening for the first time in days. "You have no idea." As they ate, the conversation flowed effortlessly, as it always did with Mia. She had a way of making Ethan feel seen, understood in a way that he hadn't experienced in years. They talked about everything: work, life, the mistakes they'd made, and the futures they wanted to build. "You know," Mia said, her tone turning reflective, "you're one of the strongest people I've ever met, what you've been through. Most people would have let it break them, but you're still here. That says something." Ethan looked at her, gratitude and something deeper stirring in his chest. "I don't know where I'd be without you, Mia. You've been a lifeline." The air between them shifted, the unspoken connection they'd both been avoiding suddenly undeniable. But before either of them could act on it, Mia smiled softly and leaned back. "Let's finish this wine before it gets warm," she said, her voice light but her eyes lingering on his for a moment longer. The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling more grounded than he had in months. But that sense of stability was short-lived. As he sat at his desk, catching up on emails, an alert popped up on his phone. A bank notification for a transaction he didn't recognize. Confused, Ethan logged into his account. His stomach dropped as he scrolled through the transactions. Clara had accessed their joint account and transferred a significant amount of money, more than she was entitled to under their agreed separation terms. Anger surged through him. He had trusted her to handle the separation amicably, and now she was pulling this. Ethan immediately called her, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "Clara, what the hell is this?" "You emptied our account." Clara's voice was defensive. I needed the money, Ethan. You'll get it back. That's not the point, he snapped. You've crossed the line, again. I didn't think you'd even notice, Clara admitted, her tone dismissive. You're always so wrapped up in your work. Ethan clenched his jaw, the hurt in her words cutting deeper than he expected. I trusted you, Clara, even after everything, but this is too far. Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Clara's betrayal had reached a new low, and he knew he couldn't let it slide. He called his lawyer first thing the next morning, explaining the situation. His lawyer, a sharp and efficient woman named Linda, didn't mince words. She's playing dirty, Linda said. But we can handle this. I'll file a motion to freeze the account and get the funds returned. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting to reclaim his sense of control, his sense of worth. The final confrontation between Ethan and Clara came a week later, during a scheduled meeting with their lawyers. Clara arrived looking polished and composed, as if she hadn't just been caught red-handed, but Ethan wasn't about to let her facade fool him. As they sat across from each other in the conference room, Linda presented the evidence of Clara's unauthorized withdrawal. Clara's lawyer tried to spin it, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but Linda wasn't having it. Misunderstanding or not, the funds were transferred without consent, Linda said firmly. Ethan is entitled to have them returned and will pursue further action if necessary. Clara's composure faltered, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Ethan's voice was steady, but his words carried the weight of months of pain and betrayal. It always goes too far with you, Clara. You say one thing and do another. I'm done giving you the benefit of the doubt. The room fell silent, the gravity of his words settling over everyone. After the meeting, Ethan walked out of the law office feeling lighter than he had in months. The financial issues were on their way to being resolved, and Clara's actions had only solidified his decision to leave her behind for good. Mia called him that evening, her voice warm and steady as always. How'd it go? It's over, Ethan said simply. For real this time. Good, Mia replied. You deserve better. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Thanks, Mia, for everything. A quick reminder, if this story has kept you hooked, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more captivating recaps like this one. Stay tuned for what's next. The aftermath of the legal showdown with Clara left Ethan emotionally drained but resolute. The funds were being returned, and he had finally drawn a line Clara couldn't cross. Still, the emotional toll lingered. He couldn't shake the memories of their better days, the laughter they once shared, or the love that felt so genuine at the time. But with those memories came a sobering realization. He had been fighting for something that no longer existed. Clara's choices had shattered the foundation of their relationship, leaving nothing worth salvaging. Ethan decided to focus on the one thing he still had control over, himself. He began channeling his energy into rebuilding his life. Therapy sessions became a regular part of his week, helping him untangle the emotions he'd buried under work and routine. Slowly, he started to rediscover who he was outside of his marriage. Mia continued to be a steady presence in Ethan's life. Their friendship had deepened over the months, built on trust, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding of each other's struggles. But Ethan was careful not to rush into anything more. He valued Mia too much to jeopardize what they had by moving too fast. One evening, as they sat on Ethan's back porch, watching the sunset, Mia turned to him with a thoughtful expression. You know, you're a completely different person from when we first started working together. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Different how? You're lighter, Mia said, smiling. like you've let go of something heavy that was holding you down. Ethan looked out at the horizon, her words sinking in. I think I have, he admitted. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm not just surviving. I'm actually living. Just as Ethan began to feel like he was finding his footing, life threw him another curveball. Clara showed up unannounced at his doorstep one evening, her expression a mix of regret and desperation. "Ethan, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to reopen old wounds, but he also knew that avoiding her wouldn't bring closure. He stepped aside, letting her in. They sat in the living room, the tension between them palpable. Clara was the first to speak. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can't take back," she began, her eyes brimming with tears. "But I've been doing a lot of soul-searching, and I realize now how much I took you for granted." Ethan crossed his arms, his expression guarded. "And what do you want from me?" "Clara, forgiveness. Another chance." Clara shook her head. "I don't deserve another chance, I needed to tell you how sorry I am for everything, for the lies, the betrayal, for not appreciating what we had." Ethan studied her, searching for sincerity in her words. For the first time, he saw a hint of the woman he'd fallen in love with, the Clara who was honest, vulnerable, and real. "I appreciate you saying that," he said finally. "But we can't go back, Clara. Too much has happened." Clara nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know, I just hope that someday you can forgive me." Ethan didn't respond, but as she left, he felt a sense of closure he hadn't expected. Her apology, though late, was a step toward healing for both of them. The following week brought a shocking revelation. While sorting through old files, Ethan stumbled upon a folder on Clara's old laptop. The folder contained photos, videos, and messages from her affair, evidence that painted a far uglier picture than he'd imagined. The messages revealed not just Clara's betrayal, but also her manipulation. She had complained to Alex about Ethan in ways that twisted the truth, making herself out to be the victim. Seeing his life reduced to a series of lies and half-truths enraged Ethan. This discovery reignited his determination to move forward. He realized that no matter how much closure Clara's apology had given him, he couldn't fully heal until he let go of the anger and resentment her betrayal had planted in him. One evening, as Ethan and Mia worked late on a project, the tension between them came to a head. Mia had been quieter than usual, her focus seemingly elsewhere. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Mia hesitated, then looked at him with a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. "Ethan, there's something I need to say." Ethan set down his pen, his attention fully on her. "What is it?" Mia took a deep breath. "I care about you more than I probably should, and I've been holding back because I didn't want to make things harder for you, but I can't keep pretending that what I feel isn't real." Ethan's heart raced, her words hitting him like a wave. He'd known there was something between them, but hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way he hadn't expected. "Mia," he began, struggling to find the right words. "You've been my rock through all of this. I don't know where I'd be without you, but I don't want to rush into anything I need to be sure I'm ready." Mia nodded, her expression soft but understanding. "I'm not asking for anything right now. I just needed you to know." Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Thank you for being honest and for being patient." Ethan's journey toward healing reached its peak during a weekend retreat his therapist recommended. Surrounded by nature and free from the distractions of his usual routine, he finally allowed himself to process everything he'd been through. During one group session, he shared his story for the first time, baring his soul to strangers who listened without judgment. As he spoke, he felt a weight lift, a sense of release that had eluded him for months. "I've been holding on to so much anger," he admitted. At Clara, at myself. But I'm realizing now that holding on to that anger is only hurting me. The group leader smiled. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from the pain of the past. Those words stayed with Ethan as he returned home, feeling lighter and more at peace than he had in a long time. A quick reminder, if you're as invested in Ethan's journey as we are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life. Let's continue. Ethan's life was beginning to stabilize. Therapy was helping him come to terms with his emotions, and his connection with Mia was slowly blossoming into something meaningful. But just when he thought he'd reached calmer waters, a phone call brought the chaos back. It was Clara. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm in trouble." Ethan's stomach tightened. He hadn't heard from her in weeks, and the last thing he expected was a plea for help. "What's going on, Clara?" he asked cautiously. There's been a mistake," she stammered. "Alex, he took some money from his company, and now they're investigating. They think I was involved." Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose, a mix of frustration and disbelief washing over him. "Clara, what does this have to do with me?" "I need you to vouch for me," she said, her tone pleading. "They'll believe you." "Please, Ethan, I didn't do anything wrong." Ethan hesitated. Despite everything, part of him wanted to help her, but another part, the part still healing from her betrayal, wondered if he owed her anything at all. Ethan wrestled with Clara's request for days. He sought advice from Matt, whose blunt honesty was always a reliable compass. "You're not her safety net," Matt said, his tone firm. "She made her choices, and now she has to deal with the consequences." "But what if she really didn't do anything?" Ethan countered. "What if she's just caught up in Alex's mess?" Matt shrugged. "Then she can prove it herself. You've done enough for her, Ethan. It's time to put yourself first." Mia, too, weighed in when Ethan brought it up during one of their late-night conversations. "Helping her doesn't mean you have to trust her again," Mia said gently. "But make sure whatever you do, it's for the right reasons, not out of guilt or obligation." Ethan appreciated her perspective, but the decision still felt impossible. He didn't want to be the kind of person who turned his back on someone in need, even if that someone was Clara. Ethan finally agreed to meet Clara in person to discuss the situation. They met at a small cafe on the edge of town, the atmosphere tense as they sat across from each other. "I'm sorry to drag you into this," Clara began, her hands fidgeting with her coffee cup, "but you're the only person I can trust." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Trust that's rich coming from you." Clara winced but didn't argue. "I know I've messed up, Ethan, more than once, but I'm telling you the truth about this. Alex was the one who took the money. I didn't know anything about it until it was too late." Ethan studied her, searching for any sign of deception. For the first time in a long time, she seemed genuine. "What exactly are they accusing you of?" he asked. "They think I helped him transfer the funds," Clara explained. "He used my accounts to cover his tracks, and now it looks like I was involved." Ethan exhaled sharply, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "Why didn't you come to me sooner before things got this bad?" Clara looked down, her voice barely audible. "I was scared and ashamed." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to walk away, to let her deal with the mess she'd gotten herself into. But another part, the part that remembered the woman she used to be, couldn't ignore her plea. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his tone guarded. "But don't expect me to fix this for you." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The weight of Clara's situation, combined with his own lingering feelings of betrayal, pressed down on him like a vice. He replayed their conversation in his mind, trying to decide if helping her was the right thing to do, or if it would only drag him back into the chaos he'd fought so hard to escape. He called Mia, desperate for clarity. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "She's in over her head, and I feel like I'm the only one who can help her, but I also feel like it's not my problem anymore." Mia's voice was calm and steady. "Ethan, you've worked so hard to get to where you are now. Don't let her pull you back into her mess. If you choose to help her, make sure it's on your terms, not hers." Her words struck a chord. Ethan realized that he didn't have to let Clara dictate his role in her life. He could choose to help her without compromising his own boundaries. The next morning, Ethan called Clara. "I'll help you," he said, his voice firm. "But this is the last time, and only because I believe you're telling the truth." Clara's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Ethan. I promise. I won't let you down." Ethan wasn't convinced, but he hoped he wasn't making a mistake. He agreed to meet with Clara's lawyer, providing a statement that confirmed her claims of ignorance regarding Alex's actions. It wasn't much, but it was enough to shift the focus of the investigation away from her. Weeks later, Clara called Ethan again, this time with good news. The charges against her had been dropped, and Alex had been arrested for embezzlement. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You saved me, Ethan." Ethan's response was measured. "I didn't do it for you, Clara. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Clara paused, then said quietly, "I hope one day you can forgive me for everything." Ethan didn't reply. Forgiveness was something he was still working on, both for Clara and for himself. A quick reminder. If you've been following Ethan's journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you these intense and inspiring stories. Let's move forward. Ethan had spent weeks recovering from the whirlwind of Clara's legal drama. With the investigation against her resolved and Alex facing justice, he felt like he could finally close the book on that chapter of his life. But the emotional scars remained, and Ethan knew he wasn't out of the woods yet. Mia was his steady anchor, her presence offering him a sense of normalcy and hope. They'd begun spending more time together outside of work, movie nights, hiking trips, and long conversations over coffee that stretched into the early hours. There was a connection between them that neither could deny, but both were hesitant to take the next step. One evening, as they sat by a bonfire in Mia's backyard, she broke the silence. "What are you afraid of, Ethan?" He looked into the flickering flames, her question hanging heavy in the air. "I'm afraid of making the same mistakes," he admitted, "of trusting the wrong person again." Mia's gaze was steady. "You're not the same person you were, Ethan, and I'm not Clara." Her words struck a chord. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to entertain the possibility that he could move on, not just from Clara, but from the pain she'd caused. Just as Ethan began to embrace his newfound peace, the past reared its ugly head again. One afternoon he received an anonymous email with the subject line, "You don't know the full story." Curiosity and unease warred within him as he opened the email. Attached was a video, grainy footage of Clara and Alex arguing in a dimly lit parking lot. The audio was muffled, but the tension between them was unmistakable. Toward the end of the clip, Alex grabbed Clara's arm, his face inches from hers as he said something inaudible before storming off. Ethan's heart pounded as he replayed the video. Who had sent this, and why was Clara still involved with Alex in some way, even after everything that had happened? He forwarded the video to Matt and Mia. Needing their perspective, Matt's response was immediate and blunt. "Don't get sucked back in, man. She's not your problem anymore." Mia's reply was more measured. "This doesn't mean she's lying, but it raises questions. Be careful." Ethan wrestled with his next move. Part of him wanted to ignore it and let Clara deal with her own mess, but another part, the part that still cared despite everything, couldn't let it go. Ethan decided to confront Clara directly. He called her and asked her to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet park where they wouldn't be overheard. When Clara arrived, she looked nervous, her eyes darting around as if expecting someone to jump out at her. Ethan wasted no time, pulling up the video on his phone and handing it to her. "What is this, Clara?" he demanded, his tone sharper than he intended. Clara watched the video, her face draining of color. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Does it matter?" Ethan shot back. "What's going on? I thought you were done with Alex." "I am," she insisted, her voice trembling. "But he's not done with me." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Clara hesitated, then finally admitted the truth. "Alex has been harassing me ever since the investigation started. He blames me for getting caught, and he's been threatening me." Ethan's anger flared. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "I didn't want to drag you into it," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "You've already done so much for me, Ethan. I didn't want to be a burden." Ethan exhaled sharply, his mind racing. Clara's choices had put her in this situation, but Alex's behavior crossed a line. Despite everything, Ethan couldn't stand by and let her face it alone. Ethan decided to take action. He contacted Linda, his lawyer, to explore legal options for protecting Clara from Alex. Linda recommended filing a restraining order and suggested that Clara document every interaction she had with him. But Alex wasn't one to back down easily. Days after filing the restraining order, Clara received a threatening message scrawled on a piece of paper left under her windshield wiper. "This isn't over." When Clara showed Ethan the note, his blood boiled. He felt torn between wanting to protect her and resenting the situation she dragged him into. But as much as he wanted to walk away, he couldn't ignore the danger she was in. "I'll help you," Ethan told her, "but after this, you're on your own." The tension reached its peak when Alex showed up unannounced at Clara's apartment one night. Clara called Ethan in a panic, her voice shaking as she explained that Alex was banging on her door and refusing to leave. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys and drove to her apartment, adrenaline coursing through his veins. When he arrived, Alex was still there, pacing outside Clara's door like a caged animal. "Hey!" Ethan shouted, stepping out of his car. "What the hell are you doing here?" Alex turned, his expression twisting into a sneer. "This doesn't concern you, man, walk away." "It concerns me if you're threatening her," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear simmering beneath the surface. Alex took a step closer, his posture aggressive. "You don't know what she's done. She's not some innocent victim." Ethan held his ground. "Maybe not, but that doesn't give you the right to harass her. Leave Alex now." For a moment, it seemed like Alex might escalate the situation, but the sound of approaching sirens broke the tension. Clara had called the police, and their arrival sent Alex scrambling to his car. He glared at Ethan one last time before speeding off into the night. The incident with Alex was a turning point for Clara. She realized the depth of the danger she was in and began taking steps to rebuild her life without relying on Ethan. For Ethan, the confrontation was a wake-up call. He'd done what he could to help Clara, but it was time to let go completely and focus on his own future. Mia was there to support him through it all, her unwavering presence a source of strength. One evening, as they sat together on Ethan's couch, he turned to her and said, "I don't know what I would have done without you." Mia smiled, her eyes soft. "You're stronger than you think, Ethan. You just needed someone to remind you." A quick reminder, if this story has kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us as we continue bringing you these intense and emotional stories. Let's move forward. The events of that night lingered heavily in Ethan's mind. Watching Alex drive off into the night had given him a fleeting sense of victory, but it was far from over. Clara, though shaken, seemed more determined than ever to put Alex behind her. For Ethan, the confrontation had been a reminder of how far he'd come and how much further he still had to go. The next morning, Ethan sat on his back porch, his coffee growing cold in his hands. The crisp autumn air carried the faint scent of fallen leaves. As he stared into the distance, his phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Clara. Clara, thank you for everything last night. I owe you more than I can ever repay. Ethan stared at the message, conflicted. While he was glad to have helped her, he knew deep down that this had to be the end of their entanglement. For his own sanity, and hers, they needed to part ways for good. That afternoon, Ethan met with Clara one final time. They sat on a park bench, the same one where they'd had so many conversations in the past. "I've been thinking," Ethan began, his tone measured. "This has to be the last time I help you." Clara looked at him, her expression a mix of sadness and understanding. "I know," she said quietly. "You've done more for me than I deserve, Ethan." He nodded, appreciating her honesty. "You need to focus on yourself now. Take the steps to rebuild your life, and do it for you, not for anyone else." Clara smiled faintly. "I will, and I hope you know how much I appreciate everything, even after everything I've done." Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked out at the park, the golden leaves swirling in the breeze. "Take care of yourself, Clara." As he walked away, he felt a sense of closure that had eluded him for months. It was time to move forward, to let go of the past and embrace the future. With Clara finally out of the picture, Ethan turned his focus toward Mia. Their connection had grown stronger with each passing day, but Ethan still hesitated to take things further. He wasn't sure if he was ready for another relationship, or if Mia even wanted the same things. One evening, as they worked late in the office, Mia broke the silence. "You've been quiet lately," she said, glancing up from her laptop. "What's on your mind?" Ethan hesitated, then decided to be honest. "You, mostly." Mia raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Oh? I don't know what I'd do without you," Ethan admitted. "You've been my rock through all of this, and I think I'm starting to feel something more than friendship." Mia's expression softened. "I was wondering when you'd say something." Ethan blinked. "You were?" Mia laughed softly. "Ethan, it's been obvious for a while, and for what it's worth, I feel the same way." Relief washed over him, followed by a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that happiness was within reach. Just when Ethan thought he could finally move on, a new twist threatened to unravel everything. Late one night, he received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "You think it's over?" Ethan's heart sank as he opened the email. Inside was a single sentence: "You'll regret crossing me." Attached was a photo of Ethan and Mia at the office, taken through a window. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Alex wasn't done, and now he was targeting not just Ethan, but the people he cared about. Ethan immediately called Mia, his voice shaking as he explained what had happened. She was calm but firm. "We need to go to the police." He agreed, and the next morning they filed a report, providing the email and photo as evidence. The officer they spoke to assured them that they would investigate, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was one step ahead. Over the next few days, the tension mounted. Ethan began noticing strange cars parked near his house and unfamiliar faces lingering outside his office. He installed security cameras and changed his routine, but the sense of being watched never left him. One evening, as Ethan and Mia left the office together, they were confronted by Alex himself. He stepped out of the shadows, his posture menacing. "You think you can just ruin my life and walk away?" Alex snarled. Ethan stepped in front of Mia, his heart pounding. "Leave us alone, Alex. You've done enough," Alex sneered. "You're the one who got involved in something that had nothing to do with you. Now you're going to pay the price." Before Ethan could respond, Mia pulled out her phone, dialing 911. Alex's eyes flicked to the phone, and he backed away, his expression dark. "This isn't over," he hissed before disappearing into the night. The police increased their surveillance, and Ethan took every precaution to ensure his and Mia's safety. But he knew that as long as Alex was out there, the threat would never truly be gone. The climax came on a rainy night when Ethan returned home to find his front door ajar. His heart raced as he stepped inside, calling out cautiously. The house was eerily silent, the only sound the soft patter of rain against the windows. As he moved through the house, he found Alex waiting for him in the living room. The sight of him sent a jolt of fear and anger through Ethan. "This ends tonight," Alex said, his voice low and dangerous. Ethan stood his ground, his fists clenched. "You're right, it does." The confrontation escalated quickly, with Alex lashing out in a fit of rage. But Ethan had spent months rebuilding his strength, not just physically, but emotionally. He refused to let Alex win. The fight was intense, but it ended with Alex subdued as the police arrived, alerted by Mia, who had been watching the security cameras from a safe location. Alex was arrested, his threats finally coming to an end. In the days that followed, Ethan and Mia began to piece their lives back together. The ordeal with Alex had brought them closer, solidifying their bond in ways neither of them could have anticipated. One evening, as they sat together on Ethan's porch, watching the sunset, Mia turned to him with a soft smile. "We made it," she said. Ethan nodded, a sense of peace washing over him. "Yeah, we did." For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan allowed himself to breathe, to truly live. The past no longer held him captive, the future was wide open, and he was ready to embrace it. A quick reminder, if you've been captivated by Ethan's journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more intense and inspiring stories like this one. Stay tuned for the final chapter. The arrest of Alex marked the end of a tumultuous chapter in Ethan's life. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of safety return to his world. The security cameras came down, the tension eased, and he was able to wake up each morning without a knot of anxiety in his chest. But the experience had left its mark. Ethan couldn't deny the toll it had taken on him emotionally and physically. Yet, as he looked back on everything, he realized how far he had come. The man who had once been lost in heartbreak and betrayal was now standing stronger than ever. Clara reached out one last time before leaving Maplewood for good. She wanted to meet Ethan to apologize in person and bring their shared story to a proper close. They met at a quiet cafe, the same one where so many of their pivotal moments had played out. Clara's face was calm, though her eyes carried a weight Ethan hadn't seen before. "I just wanted to thank you," she began. "Not just for helping me with Alex, but for everything, even when I didn't deserve it." Ethan nodded, his tone even. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Clara. I really do." They parted with mutual understanding. There was no animosity left, just two people acknowledging the end of a chapter and wishing each other well as they turned the page. With Clara's departure, Ethan found himself drawn more and more into the warmth and comfort of his relationship with Mia. What had started as a friendship forged in hardship was blossoming into something beautiful and real. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Ethan's house, Mia turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You've changed, you know." Ethan smiled softly. "I think I've had to, but a lot of that is because of you." Mia reached for his hand, her touch grounding him. "You're the one who did the work, Ethan. I was just here to remind you of what you were capable of." Their first kiss happened under the glow of the setting sun, a moment that felt like the culmination of all the growth and healing Ethan had worked so hard to achieve. It wasn't a whirlwind romance or a dramatic declaration of love. It was steady, intentional, and exactly what they both needed. Over the following months, Ethan and Mia built a life together rooted in trust and mutual respect. They took things slowly, savoring the small joys of shared dinners, weekend hikes, and quiet evenings spent reading on the couch. Ethan also found himself thriving professionally. His work, once a refuge from the chaos of his personal life, now became a source of genuine pride and fulfillment. He took on leadership roles, mentoring younger colleagues and even spearheading a community tech initiative in Maplewood. On the one-year anniversary of his separation from Clara, Ethan took a moment to reflect. He sat in his office, staring out the window at the golden hues of autumn. The man who had once felt broken beyond repair now felt whole, resilient, and ready for whatever life threw his way. He thought about the lessons he'd learned, the importance of self-worth, the power of forgiveness, and the value of surrounding yourself with people who lift you up rather than tear you down. Clara's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also forced Ethan to confront the parts of himself that needed growth and change. The story ends with Ethan and Mia hosting a small dinner party at Ethan's house. Matt was there, cracking jokes as usual, along with a few of Mia's close friends. The air was filled with laughter, the scent of roasted vegetables wafting from the kitchen. As Ethan looked around the room, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. His life wasn't perfect. It never would be, but it was his, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like enough. Mia caught his eye from across the room, her smile warm and steady. She raised her glass, and Ethan did the same, a silent toast to the journey they'd taken to get here. Ethan's journey wasn't just about overcoming betrayal, it was about rediscovering himself, finding strength in the face of adversity, and learning to open his heart again. Life is rarely a straight path, and sometimes the detours and setbacks are what lead us to where we're meant to be. And while not every ending ties up neatly, Ethan's story reminds us that healing is possible, growth is inevitable, and love, when built on a foundation of trust and respect, is worth fighting for. If you've enjoyed following Ethan's story and want to see more engaging recaps like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support makes all the difference, and we can't wait to bring you even more incredible stories. See you in the next video.